We are now roughly about 13 hours away from one of the biggest events around the financial markets. And as we are getting closer and closer to the time of the event, Bitcoin is up about 2.9%, nothing too crazy. We're going to talk about that. But number one, we are seeing some nice green across the board. A lot of altcoins are actually starting to pump a little bit in anticipation for this event. But the big problem that I do see here is Bitcoin, right? Because if we are talking about Bitcoin, Bitcoin is trading at about roughly almost $97,000. It did hit at about 97.6K earlier today. And this is where I do get a little bit concerned because I know for a fact that there's going to be a lot of people jumping into leverage positions ahead of this event, trying to play the market, and this could lead to a liquidation cascade. And this is actually happening while most altcoins are nearing for a big move on their respective USD charts. But also, a lot of altcoins are pumping into major resistance levels, which has me a little bit concerned ahead of this event because every single time we typically do start to see a big sell-off across the board if the decision is not good. Now, of course, by now, you probably already know what event I'm talking about. And yes, it is the Fed rate cut or pause decision. We're going to address that, but let's actually talk a little bit about XRP because XRP is only up about 2.5%, nothing too crazy. This is what the last 7 days looks like. This is what the last 1 month looks like. This is the XRP chart. We're kind of just squeezing here on this chart. I'm waiting for something to happen. And ultimately, as we do wait for a big move or a big impulsive move on this chart, we're nearing that point where we really kind of think, all right, well, what's the probability of XRP jumping to a new high from here? What's the probability of XRP breaking over this trend, pushing even higher than, some of these previous highs, breaking over the January highs? Okay. The probability of that at this current point is pretty low. And the reason why I say that is because of Bitcoin. Now, do I think that it's pretty low for the rest of this year or anything like that? No, I'm talking about in the short-term view. And the short-term view is like the next week. I am watching Bitcoin closely as we do get closer to this event because even on the daily, you guys can see that Bitcoin is in a nice uptrend here. It's not too bad in terms of overall structure, but we are at that resistance zone. And until we actually clear this zone, I won't be happy until we're at 100K plus, number one. And even then, we still have to clear like over 102K. We want to clear these January 7th highs. We want to clear this level here. This will be a very big signal that Bitcoin is back in a big way. But we still have a lot of work to do here, and the market is getting excited at a time where we are in the resistance zone. Now, while we are in that resistance zone, the big thing to focus on here is the fact that, yes, XRP and a lot of altcoins are getting close to a big impulsive move. They're waiting to have an impulsive move. That impulsive move, and I know that you guys are going to hate to hear this, could very well be a sell-off. And the reason why is because as liquidity around this space dries up, I'm talking about liquidations of everyone going long on, this event. If we start to see a liquidity cascade because of the liquidations, it could drop Bitcoin significantly at a time where Bitcoin dominance is at 65.2%. This is the highest level that we are at on Bitcoin dominance since going all the way back here. I just lost it. I do apologize. Let me go back to the 1 week just so I could zoom in real quick. So this is the highest level on Bitcoin dominance since going all the way back here to January of 2021. So as we really look at this, okay, we are now at a major resistance zone across the board, while Bitcoin dominance is trading at 65%. So if we do get a decision from the Fed, and today is the FOMC day, if we get a decision from the Fed that is not favorable for the market, Mainly, we're talking about rate cuts, right? Like we want to see a rate cut. If we don't get that, then I do think that we sell off. And I do think that it affects a lot of the altcoin market. I think that's going to wipe out a lot of these chart setups because of where Bitcoin dominance is at. Now, of course, it all depends on how low Bitcoin does go. Because, if we're going to really kind of look at this on like the 3-day chart, this is what the 3-day chart looks like for Bitcoin. Now, I have outlined that there is a nice gap down here that could very well be filled on Bitcoin. Now, that would be around roughly 88.4 to about 93K on Bitcoin. Now, the big signal that we are going to fill this is breaking past this trend line. Now, that would be a loss of about 94.5K, 90.9. I would argue just like 94K. Losing 94K would be a big signal that this could potentially be the next level here. But we still need to actually look on the daily and really see a loss. And what we are actually looking for is a daily candle close below 93.7K to confirm that this is the next stop for Bitcoin. Now, again, we take it one day at a time. We see what the Fed decision is. Right now, if we're actually looking at the probability of a rate cut in the month of May, it's about 1.7%. So 1.7% is betting on a rate cut. This is comical. Now, we also know that retail, even on poly market, it's a 98% chance that the Fed keeps rates unchanged tomorrow. Do you think that slim 2% chance could actually play out? We could definitely see a rate cut. I'm not betting that, we don't. I'm just saying that it's a low probability at this point. But if we got a rate cut today, it would be a massive announcement. In fact, it would be a huge catalyst. The bears would be completely dead, and we would be back in a very bullish structure on Bitcoin, because I do suspect that we break over 100K plus on Bitcoin if we get that. Now, we also know that CNBC is also telling us that, there's a 1 in 3 probability of a cut at the June session, which is what I am mainly looking at. Now, we know that, Jerome Powell could definitely hit us with a curveball here and cut today. I still think that June is the time frame to watch. Right now, in terms of a June cut probability chance, we have about a 31.9%. A lot of people are predicting, like 25 to 50 BPS cut. We don't know what the actual cut is going to be, but, I would bet on a 50 BPS cut, but we'll have to see what actually happens here. But about 31% and then a 0.9% for a much more significant cut. But outside of this, I'm definitely focused on what the Fed does. I think that today is probably one of the biggest days for the entire financial markets. And on top of that, right, I am focused on what the M2 supply looks like for, every single major currency. I've been talking to you guys about liquidity flooding the markets. We do need more liquidity, 100%. And the big thing about liquidity is that Bitcoin does follow it closely. I've talked about the 4-year cycle and why we actually have a 4-year cycle. It follows the liquidity cycles. Typically, the liquidity cycles are about 4 years. And, it perfectly aligns with elections and even the Bitcoin halving, right? Like the Bitcoin halving aligns perfectly with the liquidity cycles and the elections. And everyone thinks that that's been like coded into Bitcoin or something like that. But no, it's just been perfectly aligned since going all the way back to the inception of Bitcoin. So the 4-year cycle is mainly, following the liquidity cycles, which definitely could change drastically. But I'm focused on the M2 because we already know that China has been leading. We're starting to see the EU really kind of push forward here, Japan as well. And we're still focused on the US and what the US does next. Now, I have been noticing a lot of people talking about this recent move from the Fed. And this kind of goes back to the rate cuts, right? Does the Fed need to cut rates? They definitely don't need to. In fact, we have a lot of people suspecting that they're injecting liquidity to avoid rate cuts. We have here breaking. The Fed just purchased $20 billion in 3-year bonds. They're injecting liquidity to avoid rate cuts. QE is here, bullish for crypto. Now we have here the $20.4 billion injection. Okay. And what's interesting about this is that this is exactly why the market has been moving today. This is why Bitcoin is trading close to 97K or so. But it's also the fact that we are just 13 hours roughly. I know that this is saying 15 hours, but by the time that this does go live, we will be closer to about 13 hours until this event actually happens, until the FOMC meeting is actually ongoing. I think the actual announcement comes a little bit later, but for the most part, if we're already starting to see the QE, aka the liquidity injection happening from the Fed, and by the way, Frank Giestra also put out a post regarding this. We have the Fed bought nearly $15 billion in notes in the auction. QE by another name. It's definitely interesting to see this. I do think that we're about to see the M2 supply around the US explode to the upside. I think that's going to follow China in a big way. And if we're talking about that, then yeah, obviously Bitcoin is going to be trading at about like 140, 150K. I think right now, even going off of like the original M2 supply, which is like a 12-week delay, I think that the overall target for Bitcoin is about 140 to like 160K by the summertime, which also aligns with the alt season prediction that I do have. But overall, I do think that the Fed could definitely avoid rate cuts if we do see a significant amount of liquidity injections. And we also know that Jerome Powell has been pretty certain to really kind of go against what Trump has been asking him. And we already know that Trump and DCENT have been, saying, hey, we want rate cuts. Can you please, cut rates? I personally see Jerome Powell kind of stretching this until June. It would make a lot of sense, but, we got to see exactly what happens. I think that going forward right now, probably one of the biggest things that we have to watch is the May FOMC meeting and the June FOMC meeting. If we don't get rate cuts today, all right, my prediction from the previous video regarding the Fed and what their decision is, my prediction was June. We get a rate cut in June. It aligns with Bitcoin dominance topping between like the end of June, beginning of July. And then we also have the altcoin ETFs from the SEC decision pending. So think about it like this. Think about how perfect this situation is. Okay, number one, when we go back to the cryptocurrencies list, we know that Ethereum has been significantly underperforming this entire year. How bullish would it be to have the rate cuts in June? Towards the end of June, we see Bitcoin dominance top. We start to see Bitcoin dominance drop while Ethereum is going crazy. All right. Then, while Ethereum is going crazy, everyone's looking at Ethereum. They're focused on Ethereum. We see the altcoin ETFs approved. All of a sudden, boom, focus goes from Ethereum to altcoins. We see a massive alt season. We ended off towards like the end of the year where the market tops. And there's our alt season. There's our bull run. How crazy would that be? And by the way, it would take us to about roughly October to January. That time frame is when we really kind of look for a top of the market. I think that that would align perfectly with previous cycles. Everyone thinks that this year and this cycle is so different, but if we actually look at just Bitcoin and we go back to like the 3 month for an example, just look at the chart setup here. This season is not that different at all, especially when you compare it back to like 2020 into 2021 or even 2017 into 2018. The chart setup here for Bitcoin is very, very clear. The main thing is like looking at the 12 month, right? Even looking at the 12 month, you can really see it perfectly. We are in a very good standing for Bitcoin where we do have the red sell-off followed by 3 bullish 12-month candles. Right now, we're on the third one. This would be the year where we do see a top on Bitcoin on the entire cycle, which in my opinion aligns perfectly with like the fall time frame, beginning of even 2026. Now, remember, Bitcoin will probably top a little bit earlier, just like it did back in 2017, 2018, and even back in 2021. So we definitely focus on it. We take them one day at a time, but my prediction here is alt season starts towards the end of June into the beginning of July. We see rate cuts in June, most likely. And then we also do see the altcoin ETFs going live later this year, probably quarter I would say quarter 3, quarter 4. And then we have alt season hit the space in a big way. So I do think that we have to prepare for the next 13 hours or so, see what the Fed does. Do not play with leverage. Make sure that you have stablecoins on the sidelines for buying opportunities. But with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because of more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, this has been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.